If you ever found yourself locked in a custody war, drained by court battles, or just trying to protect your kids from the emotional fallout of high conflict divorce, this one's for you. I'm joined by Lisa Johnson, high conflict divorce strategist and author, who lived through the trenches of legal abuse and came out the other side with a mission to educate, empower, and protect. We're unpacking what happens when an ex uses the legal system as a weapon, emotionally, financially, and yes, strategically. Lisa shares the red flags to watch for, why parallel parenting might save your sanity, and exactly how to document every interaction without losing your mind. We'll also dive into the heartbreaking realities of parent alienation, the estimated 22 million parents affected, and why children's well-being must stay at the center, no matter how high the conflict gets. This isn't legal advice. It's real talk, real tools, and a lifeline for anyone stuck in the storm. Let's get to it. Hey friends, today's guest is Lisa Johnson. She's a high conflict divorce strategist who's going to help us break down what is legal abuse and how to protect your kids during a divorce. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Yeah, big topic.
Yeah, it's a big topic. In fact, the moment I uttered the words, I mean, just a flood of memory is like overtaking me because my husband and I, we've been married, or we've been together 28 years, and we dated 3 years prior to getting married. And he had a girlfriend, and they had a child, and we were in court forever. And it was not a great experience for us or for the child. I mean, and what we're going to talk about today, it just really sung to me like you wouldn't believe. But let's back up a little bit. I always tell everybody, like, I swear my podcast is like my personal therapy session because I get so much out of it personally. And I'm thinking, man, if I'm getting this much out of it, I swear people out there got to be getting something out of it too, because I just feel like I find out so many things and I learn so much. And I'm really grateful for you to come and talk about this issue because, you got to love your kids more than you hate your ex, right?
Well, some people are not capable of doing that.
That's true.
Mm.
And a lot of times it's not the ex. In my situation, it wasn't him. It was me. It was me.
Really?
So, yeah. She didn't, I think as soon as she was manipulating him a lot, and she was able to do whatever because he was like, okay, because he's so sweet, he's so nice. And as soon as I came in, I'm like, no, it's not okay that you're waiting 3 hours when we're supposed to meet at this time, and you're sitting there waiting for 3 hours for her to show. That's not okay. And
Yeah.
as soon as I said something, then he would say something, and then she knew it was me. And
Mhm.
so that's where that's how it all started. It started from we're waiting for 3 hours for her to show up at the mutual meeting place. And that's how the fight started at that moment. When I said something to him, I didn't say anything to her. It wasn't my place, but I said, that's not cool. Like, and so I totally got us off on the wrong. We're not here to discuss me. We're here to discuss you. And you're going to explain what legal abuse is in a divorce and how we can protect our children. So let's back up. Tell me a little bit about how you got started on your journey helping, divorce or people in the midst of a custody battle, and how you're helping them navigate through what is always not the best time in people's lives.
No, it's the actual opposite. It's the worst thing that could happen to anybody, especially with the cases that I deal with exclusively, the high conflict cases. So I was with my ex for 20 years. The last 2 years were spent considering divorce, but doing everything I can to try to prevent it, not understanding what I was dealing with. And then during my first consult with my attorney, within 20 minutes, he said, yours is going to be really bad. And I was like, what? Like, how do you know that? And I always say that I thought that my ex was a good person who had done some bad things, but the attorney knew better and he was right. And it took a year and $100,000. Just that was year one. And I always say I'm paying back those loans forever. And I actually spent 10 years in the legal system with my ex. So after that first year, my just about a full year, my attorney said, your ex is not going to comply with this agreement that we finally made 2 weeks before trial. And so you can't afford me anymore, because if you keep me in your case, then on your case, he's going to continue to financially decimate you. So you're going to have to do it yourself, and I'll be here if you need me." And then he gave me some ideas. And then I waited about a year and a few months to kind of get my strength and energy back and prepare for round two. And then I decided to go pro se, or represent myself. It's also known as pro per, or self represented litigant. And that was another 7.5 years and about 100 court appearances in 2 states, just trying to get him to comply with the order. So sometime in the midst of that, obviously I realized that my situation was very different from most people's. And when I'd run into friends I hadn't seen in a while, they would always say, "Oh my God, you're still in court? Like, why? Why doesn't the judge just do this? Why doesn't your ex just cooperate? Why?" And it was really isolating because, again, like, everyone else seemed like they were settling down and moving on with their lives, and possibly even staying friends with their ex. And that wasn't the case with me. And then in probably late 2020, I was looking, I can't remember exactly how I got there, but I stumbled on a judge's manual from Washington State, and in it was a description of something called legal abuse, which I had never heard of, which hadn't been put out there on social media. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is my life." And so we decided to, my partner and I, with Been There Got Out, we decided to start a legal abuse support group, because I think there was like, I read like 60 million people, or no, sorry, 60,000 people in America were dealing with it. And I thought, well, let's start this support group, because, like you said, Jess, you learn yourself when you put yourself out there. So I thought, if I can get 2 people, this will be good for me and for us. And we got 12 people that first week from all over the world, not just in the United States and Canada. And then we were onto something. And so a few months later, my partner got his certification as a high conflict divorce coach, and we put out our little social media shingle, and it's been nonstop ever since. So legal abuse is our specialty, and that it really, it's also known as litigation abuse, paper abuse because of all of the filings, judicial terrorism, and my favorite is stalking through the court, because that's really what happens in these situations. And there's 2 types of it. Legal abuse is generally, it can be called frivolous litigation, and that's where we see people like our clients' exes filing motions without merit, just to basically terrorize them and bring them back to court. Because when you're being, it's terrifying to deal with paperwork that's in some formal, on a court docket, that's like, you did this, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, so I have to take off work, I have to spend money on lawyers, I can't focus on anything, it takes away from my parenting," and your life is consumed by it. Then the other side is what I dealt with, which is also legal abuse, but that's where someone is not complying with court orders or your agreement. And then the burden is on me to keep taking my ex back to court to try to get enforcement of those orders. And so those are our clients. They're usually in that kind of situation, or they're not in court yet, either because they haven't started the divorce process, but they recognize that their ex has already said that they're going to ruin their life and punish them and take everything away, or post judgment. So they are, well, if they're in the middle of the divorce, we obviously deal with those cases, but post judgment is after a divorce is final, when there's the constant threats and continuation. We always say the divorce is just part one. But then you're in World War II and three and four, where your ex is still engaging with you because they don't have that day to day anymore. So they're limited to money, your kids, and the court. And we always say the money and the courts go hand in hand.
Okay, so I want to jump in just a smidge, okay? Because part of what I do is I want people to understand, like, when you have to go to court, and we also we were 50,000 in debt with our attorney, and in debt I say because we were barely be able to make the payments as we went, because you try to make payments as you go. But the time we had stopped, it was about 50 grand, even though we were still making payments, so it was well more than 50,000. And we also said we can't do it anymore. We can't put ourselves in financial debt. We'll have to do it ourselves. And so we also did per se or
Pro
whatever.
se. Uh huh.
And I wrote all the pleadings, and we had to document as much as we could, and I had to go in and research on how to do that, and you Googled as much as you could to learn. And but it is taxing on time, and it is taxing on your emotions. And a lot of times when you are the stepmom or the step person in the life, it's meant to try to break you up. Uh,
Mhm.
it's meant, and what it did for me and my husband, it actually made us stronger. It really fortified our relationship. We were a team. It totally did the opposite. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, actually.
Oh, no.
I'm just saying, no, I'm just messing with you. But there's a lot of emails back and forth. I mean, we had binders and binders, and I mean, boxes and boxes, thousands of emails back and forth. And in my situation, she always tried to like belittle me and make me feel small and like I was
Mhm.
stupid. And, if I misspelt a word, she'd be like, "Oh, clam, is that really the word? It's clam." Like she would say in the email. I'm like, "No, I meant claim, you dumb dumb." But yes, okay, whatever. Like she was always trying to like belittle me and make me feel small. Or she'd tell things to my husband like, "Oh, I know you still love me."
God.
And and try to say stuff like, "That's why you're doing this." Like you're
Mhm.
not, you know, because he would just say, because our in our situation, my stepdaughter had, she had attention deficit, but they wanted to medicate her, but we didn't believe in the medication. We thought we could do alternative things to the
Mhm.
medication, and that's where the rub was. And we couldn't agree. And the mom had us in therapy with her
Oh.
on how to
Oh,
be a parent. We had to go to therapy with her. There was just crazy. And when the doctor didn't take her side, she would get angry and say, "We need to find another one."
oh, typical. Yeah.
And then like when I was I went into, so I went into labor, at one of our biggest court appearances. It was going to be the big enchilada. And because my husband he had stopped working to go to school full time to be a physical therapist. And because he had to it was a hours drive there and hours drive back, and he was at school for like 10 hours, and so he couldn't work. And we wanted to reduce the child support, even though we were still paying for medical and all that stuff, but we wanted to reduce it just for the time he was in school. And then of course when he's getting a better job, she'd get more money. And oh, she was upset. But I went into labor at court in the hallway, and she wouldn't postpone it. And I'm like, "I'm literally in labor." And she's like, "Nope." And so I had my sister drive me 4 hours back home, and my husband made it 20 minutes before my son was born, just in time to be there for the delivery. But she did her darndest to try and not make him, not, not allow him to be there, because we didn't have an attorney. So we didn't have somebody on our side to stand up for us in court. So he had to be there. So what I'm saying is it's torture when you have somebody and my situation is nowhere near what you endured. 10
Oh, yours,
years.
I mean, no, yours is different, but it's don't minimize it. We meet with people, often it's like a stepmom or a step like the wife who's in the middle and feels completely powerless because her partner's ex is destroying both their lives. We do call it like a personal terrorist campaign, and they just can't even function. It's affected their relationship. It doesn't usually bring them together.
Right.
It divides them, and it's just like everything is consumed, like I said, by someone trying to ruin things. And they often that's how they still feel desirable, because you have to give it attention. So instead, that's how they stay relevant.
Right. I always thought she always just wanted to see him in a suit. And they were, because he worked himself through school. We When we met, he was a bartender and she was a bartender. But we lived like 4 hours apart, because she moved from we were in Palm Springs, California, and she moved to Long Beach. And so in traffic, in LA traffic, it's 4 hour drive. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But uh so she wanted, during the time they were, before he went to, grad school, we were still paying regular, he's a bartender, he was making his payments, and she wanted her to because of my income, she wanted him to pay more. And I'm like, well, we're not even married yet, like, I'm like, well, that's
Yeah.
not how that works. Like when, and we also, just FYI, my stepdaughter had a little princess room with me because I spoiled the little shit out of her. Like I spoiled her. We were the good time weekend parents. I will admit it. We went to Disneyland and we went to everywhere with her. She got to see more amusement parks than any of my children. Like, it was just that, I was a new mommy and I loved taking her places and we had such a good time and she was spoiled rotten by my family and his. So she didn't want for anything, you know what I mean? And if there was ever a financial issue, we would always step up. But during grad school time, he wasn't working and he needed to, we still we made payments, just not as much. And then of course, when he got a degree and he got a big time job, we paid 10 times as much. You know what I mean? So, and that was for the rest of her life, until she was 18. She ended up coming to our house for the teen years. So we had her through high school. So, because I think the daughter was like, had enough of her mom because her mom's a little crazy, um, and so she ended up with us. But what I wanted to get to the point was, and I totally went off on a tangent, but, it really affects the kids in a major way. Um, and then the kids start taking sides. It's not unusual when the parents and the family of the parent of the one of the parents is talking ill of the other one. So like, what do you call that? When I know there's a term for it.
Yeah. So the term that a lot of lawyers and therapists use is parental alienation. It's a bit of
Bingo.
a controversial thing because it's mixed in with something called parental alienation syndrome, which doesn't really exist. Sometimes people refer to it as abuse by proxy or a type of coercive control. I've interviewed a therapist who calls it poisoning the well, but generally, most lawyers and doctors call it parental
And it's hard to
alienation.
prove.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there are ways to prove it. There are certain factors called alienation factors that you can use to build a legal case, and we actually have a book coming out in January called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, which is about how to deal with parental alienation in and outside of court, because there's a lot more you can do outside of court in terms of the relationship with your children, because the court's limited to what it can really do.
It's almost like, oh, give in to everything I say, or I'm going to continue this campaign, or that I don't even know if the mom really realized what she was doing either. Sometimes it's in the midst of it all. And, like when we would exchange, she'd be like, oh, I know you don't want to go and all this stuff. She never let the transition be a smooth transition. And I'm
Mhm.
like, what are you doing to this kid? You're emotionally like, I mean, it was torture for her, my stepdaughter. And I just felt, and then there was a point when my stepdaughter stopped talking to us altogether
Mhm.
because we are now the bad parents and she knew it all the time, all along. And it isn't. Now, let me tell you something. My mom is smart. My mom is a very smart lady, but she says, and she said this about me really, but she says, children become wise and they grow up into their adult mind and start realizing a whole slew of things at the age of 27.
Mm.
When you're 27 years old, now let me just say, if you're dealing with children right now in your midst of, when they turn 27, that's the golden year. They will realize like, oh, my dad's a great dad. And this is all what I lived through, but my dad isn't a bad guy. And, I'm seeing for myself what a great dad he is. He was always there. He was at my birthdays. He went to all my IEP meetings. He did all these things. But my mom says the golden year is 27 when we grow up and you realize things and you're like, oh, that's why my parents did that, you know what I'm saying? So there is hope out there. Your kids will, if they get to an age and they become an adult and what they thought was the case with you, they realize in their own eyes and their own experiences, that's not true. Like my dad is not a bad guy. My stepmom is really nice. Um, so there's hope out there for some of you out there, but it's sad because when they grow up, it's like you're struggling through all of this and you have